Medieval bakers knew a secret about sourdough that's making modern bread destroy your gut. Every slice of supermarket bread today takes 45 minutes to make. Medieval bread took 24 hours, and that missing time is why millions of us now suffer from bloating, inflammation, and gluten sensitivity that our ancestors never had. Because during those 24 hours, something happened in the dough. Medieval bakers, without knowing it, were using bacteria to disarm a chemical weapon hidden inside every grain of wheat. A weapon that modern bread still has, but medieval bread didn't. Today, we're reopening the medieval bakery, because the solution to your gut health isn't in a modern lab. It's been sitting in the 13th century this whole time. England, 1266. A baker is being dragged through the streets on a wooden sledge. His hands are tied, his face is covered in flour and shame. Crowds are jeering at him from every direction. His crime? He sold a loaf of bread that was 3 ounces underweight. Now, you might think that's insane. It's just bread. But here's what you need to understand. In medieval Europe, if you took away the bread, society didn't just get hungry, it collapsed entirely. Bread was 70% of a peasant's daily calories. Every single day, they ate 2 to 3 pounds of dense, dark loaves. That's why the English government passed the Assize of Bread and Ale in 1266, a law that didn't just regulate the price of bread, but the quality, and the punishments were brutal. Because when a baker rushed the process, when he skipped the fermentation trying to save time, he wasn't just cheating on weight. He was producing a heavy, doughy brick that would sit in people's stomachs like a stone. And when your entire workforce is eating indigestible bricks, productivity tanks, people get sick, the economy suffers. That's why the punishment was so severe. But here's where it gets interesting. To prevent this disaster, to make sure the bread was actually digestible, medieval bakers needed help. They couldn't do it alone. So every morning, they walked next door to the brewery, and they borrowed a bucket of something that looked like toxic sludge. On top of every fermenting beer barrel sat a thick, frothy foam, brown, smelly, kind of substance that, if you saw it today, you'd assume it was contaminated and dump it down the drain. Medieval bakers called it balm, and they treated it like liquid gold. The smell would hit you first. Yeast, fermentation, that sharp tang of carbon dioxide mixed with grain. In winter, bakers would take warm balm straight from active fermentation. In summer, they'd let it cool first. The foam was alive. You could see it bubbling, moving and breathing. They'd carry that bucket of foam back to the bakery and mix it directly into their flour. No measuring, no sterilization, just raw, living foam straight from the brewery into the bread. Because hidden inside that disgusting foam were billions of wild yeast cells and lactobacillus bacteria, an entire living ecosystem. And when the baker mixed that foam into his flour and water, something magical happened. The yeast started eating the sugars in the flour, producing gas that made the dough rise. That's the part you learned about in school. But the lactobacillus bacteria, they were doing something far more important. Something medieval bakers didn't even know was happening. They were disarming a hidden toxin inside the wheat itself. A toxin that your body can't digest. A toxin that's still in your bread today. So what was this hidden toxin the bacteria were fighting? It's called phytic acid, and every grain of wheat is loaded with it. Here's why. Wheat is a seed, and like all seeds, it doesn't want to be eaten. It wants to survive long enough to become a plant. So nature built a defense system. Phytic acid acts like a bodyguard for the seed's nutrients. When you eat wheat, this compound grabs onto minerals, iron, zinc, magnesium, and locks them up. Your body can't access them. So even if you're eating a nutrient-rich diet, the phytic acid is starving you from the inside. And here's the problem. Your stomach can't break this compound down. You have no weapon against it. but lactobacillus bacteria do. During those 12 to 24 hours of fermentation, the bacteria slowly dismantle the phytic acid molecule. They produce acid that breaks down the compound piece by piece. By the time the medieval baker put his loaf in the oven, the defense system was destroyed. The nutrients were unlocked. Now look at modern bread. Factory bread rises in 45 minutes. The bacteria don't even have time to wake up, let alone fight. So when you eat that slice of supermarket bread, the phytic acid is still active, still locking up nutrients, still sitting in your gut like a thief that never got caught. Medieval peasants ate pre-digested bread. We are eating a safe with a lost combination. The only difference? Time. But the bacteria weren't the only secret to their iron stomachs. There was something else in that medieval bakery, something we'd consider contaminated today, that was actually protecting their digestion. Walk into a medieval bakery and you'd see a massive wooden trough, scarred, cracked, stained dark from decades of use, maybe 50 years old, maybe older. By modern standards, that trough would be condemned. Health inspectors would shut the place down. Those cracks are breeding grounds for harmful germs, right? Wrong. Those cracks were home to a living colony of beneficial bacteria, what scientists call a biofilm. Every time the baker kneaded dough in that old trough, the wood transferred good microorganisms directly into the bread. The trough was more than a tool, it was an ingredient. Because the baker never sterilized it. He scraped it clean, yes, but he didn't bleach it. He didn't kill the bacteria. And that's exactly what made the bread digestible. If you ran your hand along that wood, you'd feel grooves worn smooth by thousands of kneading sessions. The grain of the wood darkened where dough had been pressed into it year after year. In some bakeries, the trough was older than the baker himself, passed down from father to son. The wood itself had memory. It remembered every batch, every culture, every strain of bacteria that had ever lived in its cracks. Now walk into a modern bakery. Stainless steel, glass, sanitizer everywhere. We've created environments so sterile that no bacteria can survive, not even the ones that would help break down your food. We won the war on germs, but we lost something in the process. We eliminated the invisible workforce that used to pre-digest our bread before we even ate it. But the wood and the bacteria still weren't enough. You needed the right grain. And if a medieval peasant saw a bag of modern flour, he wouldn't even recognize it as food. Because medieval flour wasn't pure white powder. It was darker, coarser, and it wasn't just wheat. Most peasants ate bread made from maslin, a mix of wheat and rye grown together in the same field. Farmers didn't separate them. They harvested them together, milled them together, baked them together. This wasn't laziness. This was a survival strategy. If the weather turned bad for wheat, the rye would survive. If disease hit the rye, the wheat would carry the crop. It was an insurance policy against famine. During the Great Famine of 1315 to 1317, summer rains destroyed the wheat harvest. Entire fields rotted in the ground, but the rye survived. Farmers who had planted maslin lost half their crop, but harvested the other half. Farmers who planted only wheat lost everything, and starvation followed. Over 3 years, an estimated 5 to 10% of the population died. The survivors were those who had mixed their grains. Maslin was the difference between life and death. But mixing wheat and rye did something else, something the farmers didn't even understand. Rye is enzymatically supercharged. It ferments faster and more aggressively than wheat. By mixing rye into the dough, medieval peasants guaranteed a strong, active fermentation. The rye acted like rocket fuel for the bacteria. More fermentation meant more phytic acid breakdown. More gluten breakdown meant better digestion. Now look at modern wheat. In the 1960s, scientists created dwarf wheat, short, stubby, and high yield. They designed it for combine harvesters and factory efficiency, not human digestion. And they stopped mixing grains, pure wheat, every time. So modern bread lost the rye's enzymatic power, lost the mixed grain resilience, lost the fermentation boost. We didn't just change the grain, we removed the natural amplifier that made medieval fermentation so effective. But losing the grain mix was just the beginning. Because in 1961, everything fell apart. It's the year bread died. Scientists in Chorleywood, England, gathered in a lab. Their mission? Solve a problem that had plagued bakers for thousands of years. Fermentation takes too long. 24 hours from flour to loaf were unacceptable. Too slow, too expensive. So they invented a machine that would change bread forever. The Chorleywood bread process uses industrial mixers so violent they don't just knead dough, they beat it into submission. Under intense pressure, the mixers force gas into the dough in minutes, not hours. Add chemical dough conditioners, extra yeast and solid fats, and you can skip fermentation entirely. From raw flour to plastic-wrapped loaf in 3 hours. Not 24 hours, not 12 hours. 3. And when this process hit factories, profits exploded. Bakeries could use cheaper, lower-protein wheat that traditional bakers couldn't touch. They could pump out thousands of loaves per hour instead of hundreds. In the UK, Chorleywood bread captured 80% of the market in just a few years. But there was a cost. Medieval bread was naturally acidic. The bacteria produced acid during fermentation. That acid prevented mold. Medieval loaves could sit on a shelf for weeks without spoiling. They had a built-in immune system. Chorleywood bread? No fermentation means no acid. Mold loves it. So the industry added chemical preservatives, calcium propionate to kill mold, emulsifiers to keep it soft, dough conditioners to make it white. We replaced 24 hours of biology with a cocktail of chemicals. This is the same pattern you see everywhere. Natural immunity replaced with pills, gut bacteria replaced with probiotics, fermentation preservation replaced with chemical preservatives. They removed the biological system, then sold you a pharmaceutical replacement. Your great-grandmother's bread had probiotics built in. You're buying probiotics in a pill to fix the gut damage from bread that eliminated the probiotics. We saved time, but we destroyed the food. And now, looking at our gut health crisis, the bloating, the inflammation, the gluten sensitivity epidemic, we have to ask, was it worth it? And it gets worse. Because right now, the same industry that destroyed bread in 1961 is selling you sourdough for $7 a loaf. They know you're trying to be healthy. They know sourdough is trending. They see you searching for gut-friendly bread and digestible loaves. So they slap the word sourdough on the label, and they're charging you double. But here's the trick. They're still using the exact same Chorleywood process. Same 3-hour timeline, same chemical yeast, same violent mixers. The only difference? They add vinegar to the dough. That's it. Vinegar creates a sour taste. Your tongue thinks it's fermented, but it's not. It's flavored. The phytic acid, still there. The gluten, still unbroken. The bacteria, never existed. You're paying $7 for chemically flavored Chorleywood bread with a fancy label. Want to know if you've been scammed? Pull out a loaf right now, read the